Welcome to Being Human. I'm your host, Steve Cuss, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my daughter, Kaylee Cuss.
Hi, everyone.
All right, Kaylee, you're a senior in high school on the college hunt. How's it going?
It's hard. I just recently finally narrowed down to a couple colleges, which gives some peace, but it's just been crazy.
It's a stressful thing, isn't it?
Senior year.
Yeah, senior year's no joke.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Plus, you're the youngest of the Cuss kids.
Mm-hmm.
So you've also had to deal with being home alone when your brothers are out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, quite often. Yeah.
Being quite an adjustment. Okay, so for those of you who are maybe newer to Being Human, what we do is pretty simple. We help you notice dynamics in your relationships that infect your relationships. And when we think of relationships, we think of your relationship with yourself, which is often the most elusive. A lot of us don't realize we're in relationship with ourselves. Also, relationship with others. Of course, that's your precious people like Kaylee, or it's also difficult people. And then sometimes it's people in really difficult situations. Those are others. And then the third one's your relationship with God. And we help you navigate those relationships through these anxiety dynamics. Every episode, we light a candle to remember God because God's invisible and it can be hard to follow an invisible God. So every week on the pod, we just take a little moment and we breathe deep and we just light a candle to relax into God's presence. Just to be mindful that God is with us. And for those of us on video, getting to look at the light to remind us that God is as close to us as this light. Okay, Kaylee, I've invited you on the show because you're our resident expert on the movie The Devil Wears Prada.
Yes.
Okay, you like the movie?
Yes, very much so.
How many times have you seen The Devil Wears Prada?
Probably 4 now,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, Mom and I usually watch it once every year.
Yeah, once a year. It's kind of a tradition.
Yeah.
And so we just sat down and watched it last week.
Yep.
Yeah. So what we do on Being Human is occasionally we will analyze something on the screen, a TV show or a movie, because noticing anxiety dynamics on the screen is, safer, simpler than noticing it in your actual relationships. You were a guest previously on my old podcast and we tackled Gilmore Girls together.
Yes, that is my expertise for sure.
Yeah, you love Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
And I have, how would you describe it? I've come to love it.
Yes, you're getting there. I watch Gilmore Girls religiously. Like I'm on my 12th time watching it, I think.
Yeah.
And I would turn it on and he was like, this again. But now you guess the season and the episode and you're usually right. So
not bad.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so we've covered Gilmore Girls before.
Yes.
But we're going to cover Devil Wears Prada because there's so many great anxiety dynamics in this movie.
Yes.
Maybe for those who haven't seen it, maybe they've heard of it. It's an older movie. Could you give us the general synopsis or premise?
Yeah. So The Devil Wears Prada is a movie about fashion. And basically it starts with this huge fashion icon, Miranda Priestly, and she controls everybody in this specific industry. So we have Andy. She's an aspiring journalist and she just wants to get in the journalism world. So she takes this job of being an assistant to Miranda Priestly. And the whole movie is about the fashion world, but specifically how horrible Miranda is and how much of a hold she has on every single character.
And I think it's based loosely on an actual person, Anna Wintour.
I think it probably is.
Yeah,
I haven't done much research on the background.
Yeah, the executive editor of Vanity Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Devil Wears Prada, the magazine's called Runway.
Yeah.
But it's basically a Vanity Fair type thing.
It's based on, the fashion world is really, really strict and hard. So I think that's kind of the movie. But yeah, it has a lot of anxiety in it for sure.
Yeah, so the movie starts with Andy learning to navigate this new job working for Miranda.
Andy has no fashion, right? Like she's a polka dots on stripes kind of girl.
Right.
That's how she walks into her interview. And like everyone else in the office is high fashion and knows what's up. And so we kind of watch Andy completely change herself to fit into the world.
Right. And Andy has quite a solid friend group and a boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And they're all, well, at least most of them kind of make fun of the whole fashion world.
Oh, yeah. None of them are into it. And then Andy wasn't either until she got this job.
Okay. So as is often the case, and actually as you have experienced in your professional life, when you get a new job, you enter an existing system. Mm-hmm. There's an existing dynamic. Mm-hmm. And so that introduces a couple of other characters.
Yeah. So we have, I guess we'll start with Emily. She is the number one assistant of Miranda. So there's like 2 assistants. Andy's going to be number 2. And number 2 is just in the doghouse. Like you just run errands and you just take her jacket, Whereas Emily, the number one assistant, actually gets to do things with Miranda, like go to Paris, go to events. But she's quite anxious and she needs everyone to meet Miranda's standards because if she doesn't meet Miranda's standards, her life's over. So Andy and Emily meet. It's already a mess. Emily's so almost more high maintenance than Miranda before she even meets Miranda. And then we have Nigel, and he is Miranda's right-hand man. He knows everything about fashion. He's been with her for years. And he kind of makes the meetings, goes with her, but he's also completely tied to Miranda and has really no sense of self outside of Runway. And then we have Nate, and that's Andy's boyfriend. And he's completely excluded from this entire circle. Like, he doesn't know anything about fashion. He hasn't met any of these characters, but he watches his girlfriend kind of change.
He kind of sees himself losing her as she kind of loses herself.
He stays the same the whole time.
Yeah, he's consistent.
And she doesn't. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this movie is stacked with like top level actors. So Miranda's played by Meryl Streep.
Oh, yeah. Andy's played by Anne Hathaway. Emily's by Emily Blunt. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, Stanley Tucci as Nigel. So it's a big cast on this show. Also, a little bit of trivia. John Krasinski, Jim from The Office, or Jack Ryan, watched Devil Wears Prada, and that's when he decided he wanted to try to date Emily Blunt.
I mean, she did a really good job in the movie. Her acting was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a fun movie. It is a movie. I've seen it several times. Mm-hmm. You can enjoy it again and again. What we like to do is pull out some themes for people if they're watching the movie or they can think back. And really, these themes are for us to apply to our own life. Here's the first one I want to explore, Kaylee. We often talk in this show about who's the most anxious person in the room. I think you and I have a different opinion on this.
Yes.
I would say Miranda is the most anxious person in the room. Let me, first of all, explain for those who aren't familiar. Miranda has like a very cool, quiet, domineering voice. So she's very dismissive of people, but she very rarely, I don't know that she ever raises.
She doesn't yell, but like her whisper's almost worse.
It's the worst.
Like, it's not, you would rather her be yelling at you.
So if you're trying to please her, she'll either give you a look or she'll dismiss you by saying, that's all.
Oh.
Very, very dismissive, but her like anxiety is all very quiet, but her way of being makes everyone scurry around her.
Her very micro expressions is what gets everyone anxious. So she was like in a meeting and one nod means no. Two nods means yes. And if she like pierces her lips, it's over. Like, you've just completely failed her. And that micro expression makes everyone anxious, which is crazy.
The whole room is on eggshells, on a tightrope of eggshells.
Looking at her facial expressions.
Yeah. But you have a different opinion on who you think is the most anxious.
I think Emily, the first assistant, is the most anxious. I think it's pretty close between Miranda and Emily. But I mean, Emily just like falls apart. Like,
ends up in the hospital.
Yeah, she literally falls apart. I mean, she gets hit by a car, poor girl. But like, she, in the beginning of the movie, Miranda is not really okay if nothing's okay, but Emily will just like, actually, her life is over if nothing is going for Miranda's way. So Andy, this complete horrible fashionista, like Emily can't stand her because she's not meeting Miranda's expectations.
Yeah.
So it's like Miranda has Emily as like her anxiety little coping person.
She's like a therapy dog kind of thing.
She just like moves around with Miranda.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would say that Emily is highly enmeshed with Miranda.
Yes.
Miranda's well-being and Emily's well-being is one thing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm more prone to enmeshment. How about you?
I thought about it a lot. I don't know. I think it really depends. I think I'm prone to enmeshment for like long-term relationships that I've had. But other than that, I'll just like detach.
More detachment.
I think. Yeah. I'll just like get outside of it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I want to point out in this movie is that sometimes when a leader shows strength and they're domineering, you don't realize that that's a coping mechanism for their anxiety. That's my theory on Miranda. That's why I'm wondering if she's the most anxious person in the room, because if you look at her on the screen, she's super calm all the time. But then out of that calm, all of these people start scurrying around. There's so much anxiety in Miranda, the way I see it, is that it's enough to fill 5 people's buckets.
She has like a contagious anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, she's extremely anxious, but it's not showing. So you just see it in everyone that works for her.
Where do you think her anxiety is coming from?
I think she's built up this legacy of being the best fashion icon in the industry.
Yep.
That if she does anything less, then it's just a complete failure
She's
on
a
her.
failure.
And like, I mean, we start to see glimpses of her personal life throughout the movie, and she's had many divorces. She's getting divorced again. She's failing in her mind in at least every aspect of her life other than fashion. So if this fails, like, it's really over for her. She doesn't really have a life outside of it.
She's probably had to really fight hard to get, as a woman, to get to where she is.
Yeah. And like everything around her has fallen apart because of the way she is in the fashion industry. Her job is her life. She doesn't have anything outside of it.
So there are some people that have such a harsh inner critic inside that because they can't contain it, they have to project it onto others.
Yes.
Do you think that's her?
Yes, completely. There's many scenes with Miranda where she'll go in, like Mom was pointing this out. She like had a meeting scheduled at like 2 p.m. and she decided that 2 p.m. wasn't going to work. She had it scheduled like at noon. It was like 11:55. And so she walks into this meeting and they're not ready, as they shouldn't be, because they just got 5 minutes notice that Miranda Priestley's coming. And she's like, why is nobody competent? Why is nobody good enough? And I think that's honestly just in her mind. Why am I not good enough? Why am I not competent? Just coming out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't excuse their behavior, but one of the things that you can do is if you work for somebody like this, or if you have a relationship with somebody like this, it just helps you get a bit of empathy if you realize that the way they're treating others is sometimes a reflection of the way they treat themselves.
Yes.
When I study theology, it helped me to realize that some of the people that write that God is harsh they're writing that because they, the author, feel that God is harsh to them. And they're like, they can't handle it, so they have to project it onto others. That's helped me a little bit. Yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason that people treat people a certain way is just because they don't have it in themselves to treat. Like they don't have the love to put the foundation there first. There's no, I don't know. If you're not nice to yourself, you're not going to be super nice to others.
Yeah.
So.
This is why we actually on this show talk about that our relationship with ourselves is completely linked to the way we treat others and the way we see God treating us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if Miranda, this is a fictional movie, but if she could do the deep work of relaxing into being human-sized, she'd probably be much better to be around.
Which, if we even asked her to do that, why are we not competent, right? Like it's a whole thing. Like
She'd
she
blame.
wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah,
but
she'd blame.
we can dream.
Yeah. Okay. So then the second idea, and obviously we tackle this a lot on the show, so we'll be quick here, is noticing patterns of enmeshment. And some of us enmesh and some of us detach. Well, Emily and Nigel are heavily enmeshed by the time that Andy joins. What I want to explore is why do they let Miranda get away with this behavior?
I think Miranda just simply makes it you're either enmeshed in me or you're fired. And they have this crazy job that could open so many doors for them that they don't even see a world outside of being enmeshed with her. And you can even see when Andy first goes in, she's not enmeshed at all. Like she wears what she wants. She does not care. She does what she needs to. But like after some time goes on, Nigel and Emily kind of teach her that like, look, if you want this job, you have to be in Miranda's mind, literally. Like you have to be Miranda. Her well-being is yours. And if that doesn't work out, then what are you even doing? And so it's kind of a taught thing, I think, over time. And who knows who came before Emily and Nigel. But I think it's just been this system that Miranda set up on purpose.
It's one of the things I love about this movie. It's unusual in a plot for somebody to go in differentiated, become anxious, and then try to fight back for differentiation again. But that's really Andy's journey.
Yeah.
The way I picture like Miranda has like 7 gallons of anxiety and that Emily and Nigel can only carry 2 gallons each. And if I do the math, that's 3 gallons left over. So when Andy comes into the system, Emily and Nigel need Andy to carry some of the anxiety.
Yeah, and Miranda won't deal with her well-being. She's got other things to do in her language, so she just puts it on other people, and that's how she copes.
When I'm consulting in organizations, oftentimes it's not the boss that's calling me, it's somebody who works for the boss. And they're saying to me, look, I'm working on being differentiated. I'm working on managing my anxiety. How do I make my boss change? Do you have any words on that? I've got some thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard when we were talking about this earlier, but when someone's been doing that kind of behavior for so long, they're not going to know it's wrong because no one's telling them.
Yeah.
So I think being the person to tell them is not fun, but it would help a little bit because I think every human, no matter what, inside of them has like oh, well, maybe there is something a little bit wrong about this. If someone comes up to you and is like, this is not okay. And you're like, no, but everyone else says it is. Like, there's still a little part of you that's like, wait, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Whether that's a conscious or unconscious thought. So I don't know, one conversation I don't think would completely change the game, but
Yeah.
it would help a little bit.
It would at least start to change the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I wasn't sure what you were going to say. And that's one of the things I advise people to do
Mm-hmm.
is reflect back to the boss how you experience them. And what the boss does next will tell you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Does this boss want to be well? Do they enjoy and get their kicks out of kicking you around? And oftentimes I've advised people just to leave the system. Like it's not worth your well-being to stay in a toxic system.
If your boss is having a good time throwing you around, you're going to end up like the happier one in the end if you just leave. Like you're probably going to go out and have success in your own way rather than whatever they wanted you to do in the first place. Yeah.
So this leads us to the next dynamic we wanted to show on the show is Andy enters an existing system. Miranda and Emily and Nigel and everyone else, they're already in a pattern of anxiety.
Yes.
Andy finds her place in it. And because Emily and Nigel have always done whatever Miranda wants, that just reinforces Miranda's behavior and now they're all stuck.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about attempted solutions. Attempted solutions are things that you try to break the pattern that actually become the pattern. So, for example, actually it's quite comedic on the show, Miranda asks completely outrageous things.
Things that are not possible
Yeah,
for
what
anyone.
would be an example of that?
So she asks Andy, when she's a little bit skeptical of Andy, to go get the non-released, the next book of Harry Potter that hasn't been released yet. It's just the like script.
The
like
unpublished draft.
Yeah, like JK just like wrote some notes. That's it. Like that's what she wants. Who gets that? But Andy does get it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is the problem, actually.
Yeah. So if you're in a relationship with someone who's unreasonable, sometimes the worst thing you can do is hit their target.
Yeah.
And that's what Emily and Nigel have been doing for years.
Yeah.
Therefore, Miranda is conditioned to just keep behaving that way.
You can't disappoint Miranda is the whole like deal. Even when like disappointment's gonna happen, like there's just no way you can keep hitting her target without failing at some point.
Yeah, disappointing Miranda is the end of the world.
Yeah, for everyone.
Yeah.
Even Miranda, yeah.
Yeah, and again, we're just talking about a movie here, but if you're in a relationship where your brain is telling you the world will end if, that's probably not true.
Yes. A lot of times, especially with high emotions in a workplace or in a relationship, it feels like the absolute end of the world, but kind of when you're out of it, you're like, oh, it was never that serious that like my entire life would end. So I think that was Andy's experience.
I think it's one of the reasons we stay stuck in our patterns is we're so convinced that if we broke the pattern, it would be the end.
Yes.
Yeah. So Emily keeps enmeshing with Miranda. Nigel does. Andy falls into it. And then we come up to another attempted solution. We start to see Andy really behaving really badly, not just to her boyfriend, Nate, but to her friends.
Everyone.
And they start calling her on it. And she starts getting defensive and minimizing.
She starts pulling a Miranda. Like she starts becoming Miranda and is like, no. Like this isn't my fault. It's just my job. Like I have to do this. You don't have to like do anything if it's going to tie you to your world ending. Like that was a whole thing. She kept telling her boyfriend, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. They used to have a bedtime routine and they used to eat meals together. And 5 more minutes is not 5 more minutes for Andy. It's a couple of hours because Miranda has all these things for her to do.
Yeah, she goes home and does all this work at home.
Oh, yeah. She can't possibly not do it because then her world would end. And that's another sign of you're in a toxic situation.
I think we've all had people in our lives that do this.
Oh, yeah.
Is that they misbehave and they know it's wrong, but they don't have the emotional capacity, so they minimize it.
Yeah.
And that just makes it worse, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So her boyfriend is trying to get her to move toward him, and she's got all this work for Miranda, but she's minimizing it by saying, I won't be much longer. And she and he both know she's going to be a lot longer.
He's actually a great character. Like he's the only one in the show to kind of, him and one of her friends that I can't remember the name of, calls her out all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't you. What are you doing? Like she has these crazy fashion now. So she has all these dresses and she asks him, what do you think? And he's like, I don't like any of it. He loves the dresses. I'm sure they're beautiful, but he just doesn't like the new girl who's in the dresses.
Who she's
like,
becoming.
who is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So as we kind of summarize so far, you can pay attention to sometimes the most anxious person in the room is the one that looks the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And that so-called strong leadership is actually just cover for insecurity and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the time, of course. Sometimes people are just very good, strong leaders. But if somebody is exhibiting strength and everyone else is anxious around them, we would question if that's really a strong leader.
I think that's the telltale is if you're walking in and literally everyone in Miranda's office, there is not a single person who's calm there.
Yeah.
And that's how you know. Like if she seems like the only one who's calm, there's seriously something wrong.
Yeah. That's why I continue to make the case that she's the most anxious.
Yes, maybe she is.
Yeah. And then the second idea is pay attention to your attempted solutions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the attempted solutions we haven't covered a whole lot yet is telling Miranda how you experience her, which of course would probably generate in you getting fired.
Yeah.
But then you're not in the system anymore.
Food for thought, you could say. Like you give her a little like, maybe you should think about that.
Maybe if 17 people get fired in a year, Miranda starts to think, she's on her fourth husband and her 17th assistant.
Yeah.
Maybe so. And in fact, just as a little power tip, if you can put the anxiety back on where it belongs on someone without blaming them, just out of empathy and care for them, there's a better chance that they'll receive it.
There's a huge misconception that is the selfish thing to do, is to have the conversation of how you experience someone.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them. You're doing them a favor for relationships in the future.
If Miranda were to take stock of her life and see all the husbands she's blown through and the way that the people are afraid around her, she might start to realize that it's not in her best interest to act this way either. And so the sooner somebody can show her that before the system gets stuck, the healthier everybody is.
Well, and even like if you think about this with yourself, like I'm growing up, I'm learning a lot. And like even in the past year, there's like some behaviors that I do that I'm like, oh, wow, thank you for telling me. Like I would much rather know now. I'm like so young, I can kind of work on that now. And I think a lot of people have had that moment of like, wow, like maybe I should really work on that for the health of me and for health of others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first experience with that was when I was a chaplain. My chaplain peer group were very confrontive about my behaviors.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't even know I was doing those things.
Yeah, most of the time. And it doesn't have to be like out of harm either. Like you don't have to be doing the behaviors because you're wanting to harm someone. It can just be like one of your anxiety coping mechanisms, but it's good to hear about for sure.
In fact, if I'd push on this, oftentimes my defense is to say, well, I mean well.
Yes.
But it's really not about your intent. It's about how others experience you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may mean the best in the world and still are hurting so many people.
Yeah.
And that's the action is what kind of comes across in the end.
Yeah. Okay. So this then leads us to the final dynamic is when you are stuck in an anxious system or an anxious pattern for long, you end up losing yourself. You lose who you are. This is really Andy's journey.
Yeah, Andy really knew who she was. I mean, she had a boyfriend. She had a solid friend group, as we talked about in the beginning. She didn't care about fashion. She just wanted to be a journalist. And she even told everyone around her that. She's like, I don't care about this world. It'll open doors for me. And then you see the first change is her physical appearance, honestly. And then you start to see the inside of her. She almost cheats on her boyfriend, which old Andy would never do. I mean, she loves Nate. And she starts to push away her friends. She takes up an opportunity that hurts Emily. Old Andy would never do that either. She would never prioritize her job over the health of her friends. Yeah. So it's a little bit just like shocking to see what Miranda's anxiety did to her.
Yeah. So for the Being Human audience, you can just take a little assessment. Is there a relationship in your life where you're pouring in, pouring in, pouring in? It's never enough for the anxious person. That's often a sign. There's no end to that. You're never hitting the targets. But then another thing you can notice is, are you losing yourself? Are you losing who you are? Are you not acting out of your core values?
I think if you're coming home from a relationship or hanging out with a person and all you can think of, wow, I should have done that better. Wow, if I could have just done this, maybe I'd be good enough if I just did this. That's not your person. That's not who you should be hanging out with all the time. You should be coming home feeling perfectly okay with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too much in their head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was Andy. She'd come home and she's like, maybe if I get the Harry Potter books, maybe if I reach these impossible standards, but obviously it's never enough. So.
Never hit the target. Yeah. Okay, so that's The Devil Wears Prada. I think the most important question we haven't tackled yet. Andy's bangs, yes or no?
Yes.
You like the bangs?
I really like them.
Okay.
Well, she had bangs to start out with. She had these like side bangs. They were cute. And then she moved to middle bang. I thought it worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just not a bangs guy.
Yeah. I like bangs. I think they're cute.
Okay. Kaylee, Cuss, thanks for joining on Being Human.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.